So Horror Night Nightmares had just dropped the speculation map for Halloween Horror Nights 31, and it's a lot to take in. We're going to talk all about it in this video. Horror Night Nightmares is a dedicated fan website, message board, if you will. I have a link down in the description box. Obviously, Universal Monsters has been big with Halloween Horror Nights, at least the last few years, as we've had some very, very standout houses. And those over in Hollywood obviously has been doing this for a couple years and continuing the story. So in this one, we will have, speculation wise, we're going to have The Mummy versus the Wolfman, which is kind of cool because last year we kind of had Bride of Frankenstein versus The Bride. So kind of an interesting take that we're going to do now, The Mummy versus the Wolfman. I am excited to see that because the Wolfman, to me, is very, very terrifying when it comes to Universal Monsters, especially the houses. If they're done right for his scenes, they can be really, really, really scary. And one I wasn't figuring was coming was
El Chupacabra.
So it pretty much looks like a cross between sort of a dog. Interesting thought here. If they're doing this route, I believe what they would do with the dog animation is they would do the American Werewolf in London puppetry is how they're going to do this. Now, how do you base the whole house on this? I don't really quite know, because I'm guessing that we're going to go to some sort of Spanish sort of like town setting. It's going to be maybe the townsmen, maybe we're going to get a lot of survivors or a lot of humans, and some scenes with the dog or whatever coming out to attack us. That's what I'm thinking. I would have personally loved something like this being in sort of a folklore legend house where we get a bunch of different ones all kind of like put together in one house. They were kind of doing something with folklore being in the past, and that's going to come in a future video where we react to Hollywood speculation maps. So stay tuned for that if you are a fan of Hollywood event, or whether you're from the West Coast. Stay tuned for that, because we're going to have a video on that coming very, very soon. Not to tease you all, but coming very soon. And up next we have Seaside Village, which I don't know what to take from this. It's seaside. I'm guessing maybe some sort of aqua-esque lighthouse, mermaids type of thing. Maybe sort of a knock at a SeaWorld Hollow Scream event for having kind of be down the road. Maybe this is their kind of way of like,
yo, we can do mermaids better than you.
It's set to be an original house, this one, and
El Chupacabra
is supposed to be an original house as well. So I love originals. We don't get a lot of them this year, which is kind of interesting because last year we had tons of originals. This year it's a little less. Up next we have Underground Creatures now. Spawning, like, sequel, maybe? Yes, that, if you didn't already know, I was one of the original scare actors in The Spawning. But that's what I get from that. Just Underground Creatures. I don't really know what to think about this one. Yeah, as far as I can tell, it is a tent house, so I'm guessing it's just going to be very tight-knit, very spawning-ish, but that's what I get from there. We're going to skip the next one. We're going to talk about The Evil Dead. Now, I'm clueless on this one. We did the Evil Dead remake, which was a 2013 horror movie. They did that one. I enjoyed that house. Not to say I wouldn't want it to come back. I don't know if they're going to be doing the original house, which would be kind of a twist there to do the original 1981 house, which is more horror than it was comedy. And I really kind of dug that first house. There's some great scenes in there. I think it would work pretty great if they did the original. I would rather see that than the remake kind of come back again. Just because I love the original Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. and Army of Darkness as well. But I would be interested to see how they would do the original Evil Dead. So yeah, I'm very much interested in this one being the original and not the remake. Now, the next one, I'm perplexed as you, because we've had a history with video game houses and they don't go very well. And maybe that'll be a future video. Let me know down in the comment section if you'd love for me to go over the history of Horror Nights and video game properties. I don't know. It is going to be a HBO TV series. The video game is widely popular. It's got some really creepy imagery in there with these things that you're like fighting against. Oh God, I hate looking at them. Oh God, it creeped me out. So I would love for this to come. I would be very interested in this one, but I don't know. Something about this just seems very like left field for Horror Nights, but then again, you never know with Horror Nights. Next, we are talking about Halloween, which is a weird one in my opinion. I don't know what to think about this. I don't know if it's the new Halloween, if it's all three movies. It is going to be in one of the parade buildings, so big enough for them to fit a good amount of stuff in there. I don't quite know if it's going to be 1, 2, or 3. It's kind of interesting that we're getting a house they got last year and then had the previous year. I mean, saved money, I guess, on props and stuff. Really, really interesting. I didn't get to see the house over in Hollywood, so I'm excited to see it over here. Maybe they'll redo it. Maybe they will add some stuff to it. They won't do probably the pre-scene. I don't see them doing that, especially not with our crowd levels. So yeah, maybe our first return to sort of a blacklight 3D house. Maybe they can make it 3D. That would be kind of interesting or different. Maybe. The biggest thing on here. The Weeknd is coming to Horror Nights, at least by what this map says and by what came on today on social media. So The Weeknd, I've been hearing these rumors about this coming, at least for like the last month or so. I've been hearing these rumors. Wasn't quite sure what this was going to be, if this was a joke, if this was a Billie Eilish replacement. But I think it makes sense. The Weeknd is a phenomenal artist. He's a perfect fit for Horror Nights. And yes, I know there are plenty of other artists. People are going to complain that should be here. There's Alice Cooper. There's Slipknot. There's Ghost. There's plenty of other artists you can probably name that should be at Halloween Horror Nights. Sure. But The Weeknd is going to bring in just an audience that we've never had at Horror Nights. The same way the Stranger Things brought in just a complete different audience for Horror Nights and made tons of money. And what's really interesting, not just because it's The Weeknd and how do you do a house based on The Weeknd, but Horror Night Nightmares themselves made a joke about this.
The Weeknd is not horror.
And The Weeknd actually retweeted this, which pretty much, in my opinion, I'm going to say that's like a 95% approval leak that The Weeknd is coming to Horror Nights, because otherwise, why? But what's really interesting about this, so the Shrek location is gone. We're not going to get that back, at least not right now for this year. The Weeknd is in a new spot, and that is where this is really, really interesting. So The Weeknd is going to be, I'm assuming, in the extended queue of Fast and Furious. Now, this is the first time they're going to actually use this location. Not quite sure how this is going to work out as a house location. At least that shakes things up for this year. Now, what's really kind of cool and what I'm thinking, you're going to exit out this house and more than likely you're going to be dumped into a scare zone. Now, there's a scare zone listed in San Francisco, I'm assuming at the exit of the Weekend house. What would be better fitting than maybe a Weekend scare zone? Or maybe something to agree where you get out of the house and you're thrown into like a 80s vibe style scare zone with maybe like, I don't know, like famous horror movie characters from the 80s. That would be kind of cool. But then again, we don't know if the Weekend house would be based upon after hours or if it's going to be based on Dawn FM. And those are totally two different, time periods and totally two different sounds. So really interesting of what the scare zone is going to be. Is it going to normally relate to what the house is? Sometimes that typically does when you in that area, because it only makes sense. You're not going to walk out of the Weekend house and then classic monsters. It just doesn't seem like it would fit very well. So it's going to be really interesting what this scare zone is going to be and tying to the house. Also, I'm believing if we already have the Weekend at the event, what's listed here is also Marathon of Mayhem, one of my all-time new favorite shows at Halloween Horror Nights. I think this show is just simply amazing. It is a must watch. It's one of my all-time favorite things, probably besides Wicked Growth. It's probably one of my favorite things in the last few years. I love the show. Can they do 3 for 3 and maybe throw in the Weekend? I would think that would be a perfect fit for the show as well. Not the whole show, obviously, but you give him like a little segment in there, maybe throw in some after hours kind of music. I think that would be a hit with Marathon of Mayhem. Some of the other stuff here, I don't quite know how I feel about this. But there is one property we did not talk about, and that is Fear Street, because, well, I covered it in this video right here. And if you want to check that out, we talk all about what could be in the house, how is it going to look, is it coming to Halloween Horror Nights, and obviously it probably is. So check out that video, and thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for all the love on the recent video. I worked really, really hard on that video. That was probably the hardest I worked on the video. And there's more to come. So thank you guys for tuning in.